The morning Joy Adkins was born, her mother said the whole hospital smelled like gardenias. Nobody could explain it. The nurses laughed about it for weeks. A smell that's sweet in a place that's sterile, like God himself had leaned down and breathed something holy into the building. Joy's mother, Martha, used to tell her that story every single year on her birthday, right up until the year she couldn't tell her anything anymore. But we'll get to that. Joy was 7 years old the first time she understood that love could be a dangerous thing. She was sitting at the top of the stairs in their cream-colored house on Birchwood Lane, small legs dangling between the railings, watching her parents dance in the kitchen. Not a real dance, just the kind married people do when they think nobody's watching. Her father, Bill Adkins, had his arms around Martha's waist, and Martha was laughing with her whole body, her head thrown back, one hand pressed against his chest. The radio was playing something slow and old. Joy decided right then that she wanted exactly that when she grew up, that specific kind of love, careless and full. She didn't know yet that someone else was watching. Her father had been watching him for years. Bill Adkins was not what you'd call a complicated man, not on the surface. He was handsome in that quiet, reliable way, broad-shouldered, always smelled like cedar and coffee, worked as a civil engineer, coached Little League on Saturdays. He loved his wife with what looked like completeness, what nobody knew, what even Bill had convinced himself he'd buried. Was that before Martha? There had been someone else. Her name was Rosalind Carter. Rosalind and Bill had dated for 3 years in college. 3 years is not a small thing. 3 years is grocery runs and inside jokes and learning how someone sleeps. Rosalind had been deeply consuming, lie in love with Bill in a way that didn't leave room for logic, the kind of love that doesn't ask permission before it takes over your whole life. And then one summer, the summer after graduation, Bill met Martha at a friend's barbecue. Martha was laughing when he saw her. She was always laughing. She had this quality about her that made everyone in the room feel like they were the most interesting person alive. Bill said later in the privacy of his own journals that Joy would only find years after everything that meeting Martha felt like stepping out of a dim room into actual sunlight. He didn't know how dim the room had been until he was out of it. He broke up with Rosalind on a Tuesday. She didn't cry. That should have told him something. People who truly feel things, they cry. Rosalind didn't cry. She went very still, very quiet, and she said, in a voice softer than he'd ever heard her use, "You'll regret this, Bill, not because I'll make you, just because things like this have a way of coming back." He thought it was the bitterness talking. He was wrong. What Bill also didn't know, what Martha didn't know, was that Rosalind and Martha had already become friends, not close friends. Not yet. They'd met through a mutual coworker 6 months earlier, had coffee twice, exchanged numbers, the kind of early friendship that hasn't decided what it wants to be yet. Martha had no idea Rosalind was the woman Bill had left. Rosalind had no idea Bill and Martha were even dating, not until the barbecue, not until she saw them together for the first time and felt something inside her go so cold it would never fully warm up again. She could have walked away. She could have let the friendship fade. Instead, she leaned in. Within a year, Rosalind Carter had become Martha Adkins' best friend. This is the part of the story where you should feel a chill, because nobody in it does. Martha laughed with Rosalind, called her soul sister, took her shopping, invited her to dinner, trusted her with her fears, her insecurities, her joy. Joy and her little brother Christopher grew up calling her Auntie Rose. Rosalind smiled through all of it. She held Martha's hand at Christopher's birth. She sat at their Thanksgiving table. She brought gifts, remembered anniversaries, said all the right things. And she waited, patient like a season, patient like something that has decided time is on its side. Joy was 10 when Christopher was born. She remembers it clearly, the way her mother glowed that entire pregnancy, the way Bill cried in the hospital hallway, the way Rosalind stood in the corner of the room with flowers in her arms and an expression on her face that Joy was too young to read. Years later, she would understand what that expression was. It wasn't joy for Martha, it was calculation. It was, this changes the timeline, but not the destination. Christopher came into the world loud and bright, a chubby, furious baby who became a fearless, grinning little boy who followed Joy everywhere like a shadow with sneakers. Joy loved him in that ferocious older sibling way. She would have walked through fire for Christopher before he even knew how to spell his own name. Life was good, loud, ordinary, precious. And then, when Joy was 12 and Christopher was 2, Martha got sick. It started small, the way terrible things usually do. Fatigue at first, the kind that Martha laughed off. "I'm just tired, Bill. Stop hovering." Then headaches, the nausea that came and went without explanation. The doctors ran tests, said it could be stress, said it could be hormonal, said a lot of things that added up to "we're not sure yet." Rosalind was there through all of it. She'd recently, quietly, without much fanfare, transitioned careers. She'd gone back to school in her late 20s, something everyone admired. Rosalind's reinventing herself. Martha had told Bill proudly, like it was her own achievement. What Martha didn't know was that Rosalind had chosen her new career with the specific geography of her target in mind. Rosalind Carter became a registered nurse, and through a series of moves that she had years to perfect, she arranged to be assigned to the hospital where Martha was being treated. Nobody connected it. Why would they? Rosalind was a friend. Rosalind was trusted. Rosalind was the woman who sat beside Martha's bed and held her hand and told her she was going to be okay. The tests kept coming back inconclusive. Martha kept declining, slowly in waves, good weeks followed by crashes that left her thinner, more confused, more fragile. The doctors were baffled. Bill was terrified. Martha, in her last lucid months, used to joke darkly that her own body had turned against her. She had no idea that wasn't entirely metaphorical. Joy was 15 when her mother died, the official cause, multi-organ failure, following prolonged systemic illness, undiagnosed, a medical mystery. The doctors used careful, sorrowful language that translated simply to, "We never figured it out, and we're sorry." The funeral was on a gray Thursday in October. Joy held Christopher's hand the entire time. He was 5, old enough to understand that Mommy wasn't coming back, young enough that he kept looking at the door anyway. Joy didn't cry during the service. She'd read somewhere that people sometimes go numb at funerals, and she thought that was what was happening to her. It wasn't numbness. It was the beginning of a strength she didn't know she had. Rosalind stood at the graveside in a black dress, tears running down her face. One hand on Bill's arm. Bill let her keep it there. Grief does strange things to people. It dismantles the ordinary architecture of a life and leaves people standing in the rubble, desperate for anything familiar to hold on to. Bill Adkins was a good man. Joy would fight anyone who said otherwise. Even later, even after everything, but he was a broken man. A man who'd lost the center of his world and didn't know how to rebuild it around his children alone. Rosalind knew this, had in some terrible way planned for it. She didn't move fast. She wasn't obvious. She brought food. She helped with school pickups. She was there on the hard nights when Bill sat in the dark and couldn't speak. She made herself indispensable in the space that Martha had left, and she was careful, so careful to never make it seem intentional. Joy watched all of this with the particular attention of a grieving 15-year-old girl who missed her mother with a violence that had nowhere to go. She didn't like how close Rosalind was getting to her father. She told him once, just once, in the kitchen, quietly, "Dad, I don't think she should be here this much." Bill looked at her with those tired, red-rimmed eyes and said, "Joy, she loved your mother. She's just trying to help." Joy said nothing, filed it away. She was 15. Nobody listens to 15. 2 years after Martha's death, Rosalind Carter moved into the house on Birchwood Lane. She didn't announce it dramatically. It happened in increments, a drawer here, a toothbrush there, until one day Joy came home from school, and there was a second woman's coat on the hook by the door, and something in her chest went cold in a way she recognized. It was the same feeling she'd had at her mother's funeral, like standing at the edge of something she couldn't yet see the bottom of. Bill sat his children down that evening, Joy 17 and already iron-spined. Christopher 7 with his mother's eyes and his father's stubborn jaw. Bill explained that Rosalind had meant a lot to their family for a long time, that she'd been there for all of them, that people needed companionship and love, that this didn't mean he'd forgotten Martha. Christopher climbed into his father's lap and fell asleep there, the way children do when they're too young to carry the conversation. Joy looked at Rosalind across the table. Rosalind smiled at her. Joy smiled back. It was the first time in her life she'd used a smile as a shield. It would not be the last. Rosalind officially married Bill Adkins on a Saturday in June. Small ceremony. Intimate, the invitation said. Joy was 18. Christopher was 8. And if anyone had been paying close enough attention at that ceremony, watching not the bride, not the groom, but the bride's expression in the 2 seconds before she said, "I do," they might have seen something flicker across Rosalind Carter Adkins' face. Not love, not even satisfaction. Something older than both. Something that had been waiting in the dark for years. Patient as a season, certain as gravity dawn, it said. Finally done. Neither Joy nor Christopher knew yet what had been done to get there. That part of the story would take years to surface. And when it did, it would change everything. Watch part 2 now. Available on the channel.